This one actually comes from, there was an individual in the 19th century, a Russian individual named Nicholas Notrovich in 1894, who wrote a document where he claimed that Jesus traveled to India and Nepal. He said that he went to this Nepalese monastery and that the monks told him there, and he found documents that talked about Jesus of Nazareth, who went there and learned Hinduism on his ways through India and learned about Buddhism. And that's where, when he eventually comes back at around the age of 30, he gets his esoteric teachings. I mean, unfortunately for that, this comes from the idea that there's somehow lost years of Jesus, because the Gospel of Luke in particular, it has this story of Jesus being a 12-year-old. But other than that, you get his birth story, and then you get him being a traveling itinerant Jewish rabbi as an adult. But even if we look at what we can see from the historical sources, from the Gospels, I mean, Luke tells us that narrative in chapter 2, verses 41 to 52, where the 12-year-old boy Jesus goes to the temple and, Mary and Joseph promptly lose the Son of God. And it says there that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. And so that implies that he's at least there doing that, growing old as a human being. Matthew's gospel, actually, in chapter 13, when Jesus goes back to Nazareth to teach, the crowd, they respond by saying, isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't this Mary's name? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, and Simon and Judas? And so that at least implies, this is the equivalent, I've heard it said, of someone saying like, hey, isn't this the guy who we went to prom with? Like, they know who Jesus is, right? So they're very familiar with him. So if he had left and become some sort of traveling Jewish sage who learned Buddhism and Hinduism, you wouldn't get this kind of response, because what we see when we eventually do get Jesus as the adult is that he is a first century Second Temple Jewish rabbi. We're not seeing multilingual, cosmopolitan, ecumenist guru.